Hello, I'm Denise Verrett, and welcome to Save Our Wetlands Echo News. This show will focus in on the environment, something that's important to all of us. So join us for Save Our Wetlands Echo News.
Welcome back to Save Our Wetlands Echo News. Dennis Formento of the Oyster Shell Alliance. Dennis, I think you should explain to us the protests that Oyster Shell Alliance gave in the late 70s and the 80s here in New Orleans, and getting people out in the street to protest against the Waterford Nuclear Powerplant, and the significance of that to LP&L and trying to get a license to get their permit to operate the Waterford Nuclear Powerplant. Would you explain to us the Oyster Shell Alliance's role in getting people to actually protest and get out on the streets in those days?
Well, we went door to door, we put on concerts, we spoke on TV, on radio, we gave talks and held meetings at universities and churches and so forth all over the city. And we kept in contact with other groups throughout Louisiana through the Oyster Shell Digest, which was the newsletter which I also edited for about a year and a half, and taking over from other people and then passing it on later on. I think we must have gotten a good 500 or so, 600 people out for that very first big demonstration that went down Canal Street.
And New Orleans, just think of that. Here in New Orleans in the 70s, 400 to 500 people out on the street demonstrating against this Waterford Nuclear Power Plant. And what's so interesting here today in the 90s is that Louisiana Power and Light Company has the power and the money to go on radio now and advertise around Earth Day about what they're doing and this and that. But in the reality is that there was a tremendous protest in this community against their Waterford Nuclear Power Plant by Oyster Shell Alliance, right?
Yeah, that's right. Oyster Shell was, as I said, an umbrella group that took in activists as diverse as the Citizens for Safe Energy, which, to my estimation, was a fairly moderate group, all the way out to the Louisiana Natural Guard, of which I was a member, which was the group that formed the core of the civil disobedience that we carried out November 13th.
That's Karen
1979, on Karen Silkwood Day.
And Karen Silkwood, she was a worker for Kerr McGee in a plutonium processing plant that was mysteriously killed before she was to deliver documents to a reporter from a national...
Well, it wasn't all that mysterious. She was run off the road.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well.
And that is a tactic that has been used against organizers for years. You catch them at some time when they're vulnerable and they're far away from friends or family or on a lonesome road, and you just run them off. It's similar to what the lumbering industry tried to use, or did use, against Judy Barry of Earth First up out in California recently, except they went as far as to construct a pipe bomb and sabotage her, well, attempt to kill her in her automobile.
Dennis, we have some interesting footage of you on Mardi Gras Day where you talk about the Natural Guard and the Oyster Shell Alliance and their civil disobedience and arrests that occurred on that day years ago and in front of the LP&L office in Algiers. Let's take a look at that footage. For video buffs, this was shot on 8mm video film and converted to 3/4 inch. Let's take a look at that footage now. Thank you. I know Oyster Shell Alliance was able to get a couple hundred people out on the streets in New Orleans to demonstrate, which at the time might not have seemed powerful, but looking back was obviously very powerful. And if you were at those demonstrations, you remember the police and corporate surveillance that was occurring constantly. Can you just refresh our memory a little bit on what the Oyster Shell Alliance was then in New Orleans?
On the day you're talking about, which was our
Frog is not dead.
Good. Which I believe was Karen Silkwood Day in 1979 or so. We went down to the Algiers Point LP&L office with about 200 people, armed with drums and whistles and percussion instruments. And we were probably outnumbered by the police, who were there in autos, on horseback, on the roof, behind the walls, around the corner. Hundreds of cops, hundreds and hundreds of policemen. Someone even said that they saw an entire mounted troop hiding behind the levee in case they should need to be deployed if we should storm the building or something. We didn't storm the building. We did march around it about a half a dozen times singing about the walls of Jericho will come tumbling down. And at the end of that, 5 or 6 of us went to present petitions that had been signed by over 5,000 people in the city of New Orleans for asking RP&L to shut down the plant until its construction, until safety matters could be reviewed, which of course they didn't accept. Actually, I think what happened with that petition, because nobody ever actually saw that petition again. I remember seeing a police officer pick it up, and there are 6 of us arrested. I don't know if you've talked to all of them. A couple of them, one of them at least, is here.
Well, can you describe the arrest? Was the arrest a setup of some kind?
No. I mean, we knew it was a planned civil disobedience, and we knew that we were going to be arrested. And they treated us well. I mean, there was no problem. I had no problem with the officers on that occasion. One thing we found out eventually is that one of the people in our group, Phyllis Davis, actually turned out to be an undercover policewoman. One of the other women that was arrested that day pointed out that years later that she noticed that Phyllis was really nervous when she was down there in the I think they had us at the House of D first. They just took it down to the House of D. And Phyllis was apparently really nervous because she didn't want anybody to recognize her and see that she had been also part of the, quote, agitators, even though I suppose she was in the pay of the police department the whole time. We had no idea she was a cop until years later when, I guess about 2-3 years later to be exact, when a friend of mine saw her in uniform at the Vieux-Carré station, Vieux-Carré police station. And I've seen her since then. In uniform.
Very good. Are you hungry, Dustin?
It's Mardi Gras today, y'all. There's going to be a lot of disturbances on this turn.
Hi, welcome to Save Our Wetlands Echo News again. This is Luke Fontana, the Executive Attorney and founder of Save Our Wetlands, Inc. Dennis, that was quite good, great footage. We should tell the audience it was shot on Mardi Gras Day, and that's the reason you see the beads and some other things. I think we should go to Gary Grosch now, because Gary Grosch, you played a very significant part in the role of the intervention that Oyster Shell Alliance did with Save Our Wetlands before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission on LP&L's request for an operation permit for the Waterford Nuclear Powerplant. I think 2 issues were raised. One was synergism, which is the cumulative effect of the release of the radioactive waste by the Waterford Nuclear Powerplant in conjunction with all the other carcinogenic industrial pollutants in that area, like the petrochemical plants, and what effect, the synergistic effect of that would be. The other issue was raised was evacuation. Can you tell us, the audience, the role that you played in that intervention?
Yeah, the role that I played, Luke, was I kind of coordinated the intervention. I got the attorneys to work with us. I got the experts, the medical experts, the evacuation experts to work with us. And ultimately, we had another issue, and that is the quality assurance of people who built Waterford 3. This was about the 1984-1985 time frame. Quality assurance and the cracks in the foundation of Waterford 3. All that played a part in my opposition to the Waterford 3 in particular, and nuclear power in general, because it's clear that they didn't know the medical consequences. They couldn't really evacuate the people around the area, and the thing wasn't built right in any event. So. You know, thank God we haven't had an accident up to this point, but it really shows the ignorance of this technology, because they put us at all this risk, and for what? For a power that we didn't really need and we can't afford. What they're telling us now is, hey, you know, we have to go slow in putting in an energy efficiency plan in the state of Louisiana, which we, the Alliance for Affordable Energy, is pushing at the state level and in the city of New Orleans. And the reason that they're saying that we have to go slow in putting in energy efficiency is because we have all this excess power. Now, they were telling us that they needed to put Waterford 3 on or the lights would go out, and now they're telling us all this power is excess. So they're playing both sides against the public interest, and people have to understand that so that we can really make some movement forward on energy efficiency and environmental protection in this area, because the large corporations like LP&L will push at one point for something that's dangerous, and then 5 years later they'll say, well, now it's excess, and therefore you can't do anything positive now. So people have to be aware of it and react to it.
I think you should tell the audience too about the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's role. Like, they're supposed to be the regulators, but it's been found out that they actually are the propagators of nuclear energy.
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has been described as the cheerleader of nuclear power. They were put in place by Congress. Initially, they were put in place with the dual role of regulating nuclear power and at the same time promoting it. It was clear that you can't do both at the same time. In the early 1970s, they bifurcated those groups. One went to the DOE and one went to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, whose role was supposed to be to simply regulate the safety of these nuclear power plants, but they brought on the same people who have been promoting it for years and years. They put them on as judges in the Nuclear Regulatory Commission hearings, and ultimately we were not able to get justice. It was clear that they didn't know what the medical effects were going to be. It was clear that they couldn't do the evacuation around the plant, and it was clear that the plant wasn't built correctly. Nonetheless, they granted it a license, and at Waterford 3 was not a unique situation. There were licenses granted all over the country to power plants that were even more poorly constructed than Waterford 3, if that's possible to understand, or to evacuation plans. They in fact granted evacuation plans to the Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant in an area in which the state of Massachusetts refused to even participate. Yet the NRC went ahead and granted this license. So the NRC saying nuclear power is safe simply has no credibility.
Nuclear power is safe, nuclear power is cheap, nuclear power is necessary. All lies. That's what they built the plant on. Gary, we got some historical footage. We have the second nuclear jazz funeral that was held in Jackson Square in the 80s. Why don't we take a look at that? It's quite interesting. And we'll be right back after this nuclear jazz funeral.
Greetings, my name is Luke Fontana. I'm going to take you to a city that I think you're really going to enjoy. In fact, maybe you can hear the music and the steamboat in the background. A land of dreamy dreams, the city that care forgot, New Orleans. Welcome. It's Jazz Festival time in New Orleans right now, and we're going to take you to something very special and quite different. A jazz funeral in the French Quarter. And here we go. Hang on. Well, that's enough of our favorite song. But we like it here. It's a lot of fun. You get into the act the longer you're here. And you start to get as crazy as the people that probably live here, at least come here to loosen up on weekends. And we're accountants, and, you know, we don't get to loosen up at home very often at all.
I love New Orleans. There's no place like New Orleans. Feel the warmness.
Yes, my name is Gary Grosch. I'm with the Alliance for Affordable Energy. The point that I think needs to be made here is that it is not capitalist technology, it is not socialist technology, it is just death technology. That's what nuclear power is, and it affects bureaucracies the same way, whether it's in the United States or the Soviet Union. If you like lies, you'll like nuclear power because they've been telling them for 20 years.
Welcome back to Save Our Wetland Echo News, a nuclear jazz funeral, only in New Orleans, right? Well, that's what makes Save Our Wetland Echo News a very historical documentary type film. Gary, I think we should tell the audience that the nuclear jazz funeral was held after the Chernobyl accident.
Yeah, and I think that what that shows, Luke, is that nuclear power, despite what was pushed prior to the Chernobyl accident, and what they were saying was that, well, 3 Mile Island was bad, but not many people died. There was only a few cancer cases. But the Chernobyl accident in the Soviet Union showed that these power plants can literally blow a cork out of the top. and that they can radiate an entire area of the country. In fact, this is what we are afraid of, what will happen in Louisiana with Waterford 3. And in fact, you brought it up in the hearings in front of the judges, and they were poo-pooing the whole thing. Well, these can't blow up, and these can't do this and that. It simply is not true. They can release large amounts of radioactivity. They can infect the entire environment with radiation. And frankly, given the safety record of the nuclear industry and nationally and worldwide, I don't think that we can have much confidence.
Gary, when Save Our Wetlands and Oyster Shell Alliance did the intervention before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission on the operation permit for LP&L, eventually, of course, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission denied the intervention, said evacuation can happen, which we all know is a lie. Synergism isn't scientifically proved or something. Save Our Wetlands withdrew out of the intervention. We just basically exhausted our financial resources. But you stayed on. You stayed on. You did something that a lot of people don't know about, not even I know about today, to even document further the lack of quality assurance, the lack of the construction defects. Explain what happened after the intervention.
Well, what happened was that around the country there were people coming forward with stories about what was happening at these nuclear power plants. They're called whistleblowers. And a group out of Washington, D.C. called the Government Accountability Project had been very successful at finding whistleblowers in different parts of the country. And in fact, what was happening is people who worked at Waterford 3 called me up and said, look, we have all this information, we know what's happening, there has been no quality assurance or quality control at the Waterford 3 nuclear power plant. What can I do as an individual who worked there to try to stop this? Well, what we did is that we called the Government Accountability Project and we said, look, we've got these people, help us to put together a case so that we can bring this in front of the people and bring it in front of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We did it for both the quality assurance breakdowns and also the cracks in the foundation of Waterford 3. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission did what they did with the cancer question and the evacuation question. They rubber stamped it. They said that it had no credibility and that it was not anything people had to worry about and that Waterford should go online. I think once again they showed their bias.
Ralph Nader has described the Waterford Nuclear Power Plant, has he not?
He has described it?
I understand it. They pinpointed.
Sorry.
Ralph Nader has said that this Waterford Nuclear Power Plant is the worst constructed nuclear power plant in the United States.
I don't know. I mean, you're saying that.
Yeah.
I really don't know that.
This is the Waterford Nuclear Power Plant was proven to have a lack of quality assurance programs, has construction defects.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was built on a theory of a floating foundation. They built Waterford 3. Anyone who's built a house in New Orleans knows that very often you have to build on what we call coffee ground soil, and that's what they built Waterford 3 on. And what that means is that if it gets wet, it holds up, but if it dries out, then it can fluctuate. And the base of Waterford 3, the concrete mat, kind of goes up and down with the rise and the fall of the sea levels or the river level every year, and it started to crack early on, unbeknownst to the engineers, and they had no theory on why it was happening, and yet the NRC, even when it was brought to their attention that all this was happening and that there was no theory for it, they came back and signed off on it. So, you know, it shows how they can kind of organically go around all the defects of nuclear power plants to continue to do what they wanted to do in the first place, which is to put the darn things online regardless of the safety of the population.
We have some more footage of Gary Grosch at the Nuclear Jazz funeral in the 80s. Let's take a quick look at it. By the way, this was shot with Betacam, and that's why you'll see the quality assurance of this film to be a little bit better. Thank you very much. Be right back as soon as we see some more raw footage of Gary Grosch.
We must get the people to walk over the bridges that we have built with our lives over the past 6 years. We must get those people to form themselves into a political arm. We must ferret out the political structure that is keeping the nuclear industry alive in this city. And we will find out who those people are, and we will get them out. We'll get our own people in there. We need people who are protecting our interests. We do not need people protecting the interests of Middle South Utilities, New Orleans Public Service. We need people who are protecting our interests. Gary Grosch cannot do everything. Tom Blowenberg cannot do everything. Dr. Myron Katz cannot do everything. We need to have a community of individuals, and we do have a community of individuals. We need a greater effort. The accident in Russia has shown that this kind of thing can happen anywhere. Don't let anybody tell you that it cannot happen at Waterford 3. Waterford 3 was built unsafely. We have proven that beyond any reasonable doubt. Grand Gulf was built unsafely. We have proven that beyond any reasonable doubt. The only question is politically whether or not we can muster the forces necessary to shut these power plants down. They are economically inviable, and they must become politically inviable. So help us, and we will form a political arm in this community and shut down these nuclear power plants. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Denise Verrett, reporting for Save Our Wetlands Echo News. This show will focus in on the environment, something that's important to all of us. So join us for Save Our Wetlands Echo News.
You know, I was born and raised on this mighty Mississippi. And back when Huck Flint and I were young'uns and fond of floating on the river on that big old raft, we could drink this water. Can't do that these days. Too much pollution. Our rivers are a vital source of life, and we must protect them.
Everybody knows exactly what's going round. They went and cut half of the old trees down. Hardly left the spot. We want to swim in this town. We want to sail the wetland. Head to the highway, it ain't been no more. There's a whole block that we used to live on.